And we are live. Had a little week off there, a little vacation time. You can see I'm a little extra tan, or you guys are pale, one or the other. But the DFS OG is back in the house Wednesday, talking everything in the sports world. Once again here, presented by our friends over at FanDuel. So thank you to them for sponsoring the show. And we'll have a little announcement. We've been talking about it. We've been teasing it. A little contest, a big contest actually, just for our listeners, so stay tuned. We'll hit on that towards the end of the show. Let me bring in my fellow OGs. Good to see you boys. I missed you guys. It's been a couple weeks here. So Chop, Noto, let's start with you, buddy. How's things? Again, we know you're busy with golf, all kinds of stuff going on. Naomi Osaka NFTs. Noto's already got one in the bag here on DraftKings. So a good start to the day here from Mr. Noto. How we doing, buddy?
Yeah, good start of the day. Top Shot's back and bumping, so that's good to see. Little man off to kindergarten, and got to experience jury duty for the first time ever. That was quite an experience. So
you actually got picked, and we're in the. Oh, okay. See, I've always gone, and you just sit in the waiting room forever, and then they send you home, which is not a bad thing. You make $2-3 for the whole experience, so. What was it? A cool case at least? Anything exciting? What tell us? Give us a little deets on what happened here.
Yeah, so they're trying to keep everyone separate for COVID spacing and everything. So they only had 16 people waiting, and they only picked 4. And of course, I was one of the lucky 4. So yeah, it was interesting having a jury with 4 people. But we came to the decision pretty quickly. Very interesting case. I don't know if I'm supposed to really talk about it, but. Yeah, it was. It took the whole day too. 8:30 in the morning. Got out about 5. Wouldn't recommend it, but didn't hate it.
Guilty?
Not guilty.
Not guilty. Okay, I can roll with that. Innocent until proven guilty. Gotta love the justice system. Chop. We need the countdown. I skipped a week here, so Noto's talking about kindergarten. I'm looking around and seeing my damn kids running around everywhere. I think we're on a similar countdown here, Chop. So my kids don't go back till after Labor Day. I still got a little ways to go here. We got to be, 2 weeks out? 10 days out? What are we looking at here?
Yo, you're talking about for school.
For school, yeah. I mean, I'm with you now. That's taking precedent over NFL.
My 3 went back on Monday.
Oh.
Yeah, Monday was the first day. So it wasn't as smooth as I thought it was going to be. I got to be honest with you, man. We had a hiccup here, and I get it. I understand what we're doing with safety and everything. But my boy, he went his second day of school, like 10 a.m. in the morning. He told the teacher, my stomach kind of hurts. That happens. Second day of school and those things. Well, protocol says she's got to send him to the nurse. And then protocol says the nurse has got to call us, and we got to come get him for a stomach ache. And then when we get there, the nurse says protocol is, yeah, he's out for 10 days now.
Oh,
what?
Right.
Yeah, right. Like 10 days for a stomach ache because it's a symptom of the COVID. So we're dealing with that right now, and it's just going to be a rough year if it's going to be like this, man. If everybody who goes down to the nurse or complains about something is going to get sent home for 10 days. But the other 2 are in school. The other guy's up in his room chilling. So we'll figure it out. We'll get to it. But, I'm just anxious for some football to crank up because I'm a little bored now.
Yeah, we're getting close. We're getting to that 3rd week of preseason. So we are definitely getting close, and we got a question in the chat already, and I'm glad because I forgot to mention this is a live show. You guys got questions? We will see your questions. Get them in there. Major one-on-one wants to know, is this NFL content today? Absolutely. We had to get our school countdown in. We are definitely on an NFL countdown as well, and we will go to the wide receiver position today and break down as many as we can from a best ball lens, from a season-long lens. We know a lot of you guys got drafts coming up, Dynasty. We'll look at it from all angles. So we will definitely get into the NFL. So before we do that, some news. We had a little trade go down today, Chop. So Sony Michel shipped to the Rams. I know Darrell Henderson, been a big topic. Seems like people love him. They believed in him. Other people kind of skeptical on him. Now you add Sony Michel to this backfield. How do you see this playing out? What's the first instinct? Is this going to be a split? I've seen some people say Sony Michel may be the lead back here with Henderson working in. So Your gut here, what's the gut telling you about Sony Michel versus Darrell Henderson here in the Rams backfield?
Well, the fact that they would make a trade tells me that maybe they just don't believe in Henderson being a big time back or a full workload kind of guy. So it tells me that Michel could have a chance here to move in and be pretty good. Like, he's not that far removed from being a first round pick in the NFL. He's not that old, and he doesn't come with a lot of wear and tear because he hasn't had a lot of carries in New England. And you got to think, coming out of Georgia, if you remember, the guy was awesome. Could catch passes like a wide receiver, a solid runner. So, I wouldn't be surprised one bit to see him be the guy who gets the most action in this backfield once he gets acclimated. And it is a running back. It's not like if a receiver was traded right now, I'd probably scratch the receiver off my list because it's just hard to make that move from one team to another, one system to another. But running back could pick it up pretty easy. So, yeah, I'm not very bullish on Henderson anymore, and I think Michel has a chance, man, to be pretty good. But also on that other side, on the other team, I think it really opens the door for Damian Harris to. Man, I just can't get over remembering those days of LeGarrette Blount scoring like 15 touchdowns a year, and those. I really think Damian Harris could fall into the end zone a whole bunch of times this year now.
Yeah, Ramondre Stevenson, a guy that's looked really good in preseason. I think he's going to get a shot. The issue with your plan there, Chop, is Cam Newton is still the starting quarterback, and we know
maybe
right for now. I think Mac takes that job eventually, but we know Cam's going to steal some of those goal line touches as well. I do like Damian Harris. Would love to see him be more involved in the passing game, which he's never really shown the ability, or maybe they just haven't ever thrown him the ball. We'll see. But as far as those Rams guys, I'm kind of with you. I was liking Henderson. I kept moving him up. Even Xavier Jones was a guy that looked interesting as the potential number 2 there. He kind of loses all value now, and it almost makes both of those guys undraftable to me. If Henderson and Michel are going to be splitting this thing, it's going to be a team that's got to throw the ball a lot as well. Woods, Kupp, Higbee. So I just don't know if there's enough to go around and make those guys viable. You can probably still get a pretty decent discount on Sony Michel, but at the end of the day, I think they're both kind of hands off for me. Before we go to Noto, Anthony in the chat asked, will my Lions go 0-16 again? No, Anthony, it's not going to happen. They're going 0-17, baby. Don't forget that extra game. Lions going to be bad. I think we're all fans of the under for that team. So going to set NFL records here, 0-17. Noto, thoughts on the Lions 0-16, 0-17, and this trade with Sony Michel to the Rams?
The Lions will get a couple wins. You guys summed up the Sony Michel thing pretty perfectly. The only takeaway is bad news for Darrell Henderson. You wouldn't make the trade that late, before the season, if you weren't worried. So, and shout out to Davis Maddock. He put up some stats on Sony Michel. 9 games last year. He had 22 fantasy points above expectation. And if you know anything about Sony Michel, for years he was just constantly underproducing. So he actually looked pretty good. He had a pretty good rush grade as well from Pro Fantasy or Pro Football Focus. So I think he's interesting. But for the most part, I think I'm just avoiding both of them.
Yeah, I don't think he's as bad as people like. People bash this guy. He's terrible. No, he's probably not living up to the draft pedigree there with New England. But I don't think he's as bad as people have labeled him to be. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out. Just something to obviously keep in mind with drafts coming up.
People forget Sony Michel put that New England team on his back and carried them to a Super Bowl title a couple years ago. He put them on his back, man. So. And people want to give Tom Brady credit.
James White.
Let's face the music. Sony Michel put him on his back.
He had that big game in Kansas City, didn't he? If I remember correctly.
He actually had a couple. I say it jokingly, but he had a couple of monster games in the playoffs that year that really helped him get to the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. So I wouldn't stick a fork in him just yet. So. All right, we're going to get into wide receivers today. If you've missed, we've talked quarterbacks, which would have been 3 weeks ago, so you can go back and watch that. We talked running backs 2 weeks ago. We'll cover wide receivers as far as we can get down the line here. This week, we'll hit tight ends next Wednesday, and then, we're on the precipice of football season. So weekly, we will be talking the slate, our favorite plays, our favorite bets. So really looking forward to the – Chop, they're beating you up in the chat here. So would you want to respond here to A. Dean?
I mean, I just shaved today, and yeah, it's I noticed a little extra gray hair in the old beard too. So
Oh, come on.
I don't need to be the guy. Don't come here to have more people rub that in on me. I get enough of that in other places.
I mean, look at all this gray. It's coming in everywhere, man. Again, my kids are still here for another couple weeks, so you guys enjoy that somewhat quiet time, Chop. I know what you're going through there. My oldest daughter went through that last year at school. Close contact, home for 2 weeks. Close contact, home for 2, like constantly in and out of school. So, yeah, we'll hopefully the little man's back in school here soon. All right, receivers are on the list here for this week. We're going to use the best ball ADP here on FanDuel. Plenty of games in the lobby here. Just go to NFL, go over to the best ball tab, and they have contests galore. So we will start at the top. I think this guy's number one on a lot of lists, a lot of ADP lists, a lot of drafters lists. My boy Devontae Adams, Derek. Hard to argue with this one. Aaron Rodgers back in the fold. I know that was the concern. Are we going to have Aaron Rodgers or not? We know the targets are going to be huge. The usage around the goal line is going to be huge. The touchdowns are always there. Can they score as many touchdowns as they did last year? Probably not. That number is going to come down a little bit. They were very efficient, but hard to argue with Devontae Adams here. If anything, top 3. You could have a different order here. I know Tyreek Hill, a fan of some, Diggs, but Devontae Adams, my wide receiver 1. Do you agree with this number here?
Yeah, my wide receiver 1 as well. And I saw this morning. He's had the best fantasy point per game season since Jerry Rice in 1987. So just amazing on a point per game basis last year. You mentioned he doesn't have a lot of competition for targets. And yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers loves throwing in the ball, even from the 1 yard line. They threw the ball so many times last year. So for me, the clear wide receiver 1, but there are some really good names up here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's almost splitting hairs up here. I don't think you can get it wrong. To me, there's a top tier Adams, Hill, and Diggs. But Chop, Devontae Adams, wide receiver 1, agree, disagree?
I agree. In any format, he can catch balls in bunches, so PPR is good. And I mean, his touchdown equity is off the chart, better than any wide receiver I've maybe ever seen. The way they work him in around the goal line, so easily the number 1 guy the minute we knew Aaron Rodgers was coming back.
Absolutely. Anthony, I see you asking about Lions receiver. I can't mix in that bunch of receivers right now with the receivers we're talking about. We're about 27 tiers apart, but when we get down there, we'll try to talk some Lions wide receivers. So Tyrell Williams already dealing with an injury. So it may be a long season for these Lions receivers. The answer, to me, TJ Hawkinson, but we'll try to get there. All right, Chop, Tyreek Hill, number 2. Again, I don't think this takes a ton of analysis. Obviously, big play threat there with Patrick Mahomes. It's pretty much him and Kelsey with all the targets. Sammy Watkins is gone. We'll see, if Hardman steps into that number 2 role. But this guy's lightning in a bottle. I don't see anything changing here with Tyreek Hill. I think he's deserving of this number 2 spot. Is exactly where I have him in my rankings. Agree with this number for Tyreek Hill.
I agree with it, or I say I don't disagree with it. Like, there's a couple other names that you could throw in here for the number 2 spot that are fine. But, yeah, I expect a huge year out of Mahomes. Bounce back, new offensive line, much better. As long as this guy can stay healthy, man, that's the only thing. Just stay healthy, because he relies everything about him is about his speed. So you can't have any problems with that. As long as he stays healthy, he's going to have some just monster weeks at times. So, yeah, I can't disagree with him being the number 2 guy here.
Yeah, he's viable in all formats. Obviously, you mentioned those spike weeks in best ball are nice. In season long, pretty consistent as well. Scores a lot more touchdowns than you would think for his guy his size. But that speed, that big playability, Derek, lightning in a bottle here. So Tyreek Hill, number 2 for you as well.
Yeah, he's my number 2, at least, at the end of the season. I think he'll be there. But week to week, I mean, he's going to be so volatile. You just look at his numbers, his game log from last year, and 5 times over 100 yards, a couple times like some massive games, and then, a lot of duds in there as well. So from a DFS perspective, he's going to be like that perfect GPP guy. From season long, I think Adams is going to be a lot more consistent. But, yeah, you guys mentioned it. Great offense, huge threat, and he receives more rushing attempts than most wide receivers.
Yeah, we'll see. CEH kind of banged up here, so maybe they utilize him even more in that role, those jet sweeps. So good call there. Number 3, again, the big 3 here in everybody's order pretty much. Stefon Diggs. The Bills really had that breakout season going over to Buffalo with Josh Allen. We know this team is going to throw the ball a lot, Derek. Yes, there's competition for targets, but he's going to dominate those targets. Now, dealing with a little bit of an injury here heading into week 1, so maybe that's your tiebreaker. If you can't decide on Adams, Hill, Diggs, you're kind of stuck on all these guys. I have him number 3, but again, in that same tier with these guys. Thoughts on Stefon Diggs here for 2021?
Yeah, love Stefon Diggs. I looked it up this morning. He was 20th in ADP among wide receivers last year. Everyone was concerned about him entering a new offense. Nobody really predicted the Josh Allen breakout season. So you got to think he's going to be even better. Second year in the system. We know the talent's great. We know Josh Allen's great. So, yeah, no issue with him at number 3.
I was one of those guys. I fell for the old receivers changing team narrative, and it's just sometimes you fall into these little traps and missed out on Stefon Diggs. So, Chop, where do you come out on this guy? What was amazing last season, was flat out dominant. I think he does it again here this season.
He was really good, and like if I'm looking into the top tier of guys here, and I'm trying to find a guy who may not repeat, he's the guy that I think may not repeat because he has a lot, has to stay healthy. Sometimes that's an issue with him. Maybe Josh Allen takes a step back, maybe just a small step back, or he ran really good last year to put up those numbers. So that's the only thing about him. He's the one guy who may step back a little bit, but otherwise he's got all the things working in his favor, and I could see him having another big year.
And there is competition. I mean, they bring in Emmanuel Sanders, and he maybe has more gray hair than we do, but still a viable option. Gabriel Davis, a young guy that has shown flash, and Cole Beasley. We'll see what happens with him and the vaccine and all that nonsense. But there are a lot of receivers there, so he will dominate the targets, no doubt. But like you said, maybe he does take a little bit of a step back. So let's go to number 4. This guy I'm very high on this season, Chop, Calvin Ridley. Stepping into the alpha role here in Atlanta. Some may argue he's already done that with kind of the aging Julio Jones last season, but Julio now out of town. Kyle Pitts is in, Russell Gage. So this could be a 150, 160 target guy. I think the worry is Matt Ryan dust. Is he still a viable option? How high are you here on Calvin Ridley this season?
Pretty darn high on Calvin Ridley. I'd put him up there, and there's a piece of me that would say he might be better than Diggs, just because first off, he's young in NFL years, hadn't been around that long, but he came out of college, he was really old, so he's got some experience, he's mature like that. I don't mind Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan is a fine real life quarterback for putting up stats. I wouldn't take him in DFS necessarily too many weeks because he doesn't run, and that's the thing now. But I think for NFL purposes, he can get the job done. I think they're going to be playing from behind quite a bit this year, and just a lot of things to like. And he's got Kyle Pitts to help out, take some of the pressure off. If it was just Ridley by himself, I'd be worried about all the different schemes to stop him. But it's going to be hard to scheme up if Kyle Pitts is actually as good as we think he's going to be. So he's got a lot of good things working in his favor. I like Calvin Ridley quite a bit.
Yeah, and they could be in some shootouts. That defense I don't think is going to be very good either. The running game is a big question. How good is Mike Davis? So I think this team's going to be throwing the ball a lot here, Derek, and I think Calvin Ridley going to get a ton of those targets. So thoughts here at number 4, Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, you guys mentioned they're probably going to be playing from behind a lot, and I haven't looked at their schedule, but they got at least 9 dome games, which is always good. And if you look at his numbers without Julio, he's played 7 games without him in his career. He's averaged 11 targets and 109 receiving yards per game. I love him just as much as you guys.
All right, this next group is where it kind of gets interesting. Everybody has a favorite. People have guys they avoid in this tier. So this is where it starts to kind of go into the next tier of guys, in my opinion. To me, Ridley belongs either at the bottom half of that first tier or the top of the second tier. But next guy, Derek, DK Metcalf, we saw take a massive leap forward last season, become the number 1 there over Tyler Lockett. Well, you could say 1A, 1B in that offense, really doesn't matter. But the whispers of Seattle, wanting to play faster, wanting to let Russ cook. Is this a good thing for DK Metcalf? Does he continue to take another step, continue to get better? Your thoughts here? Or have we seen the best of him already? Where do we come out in DK Metcalf?
Don't think we've seen the best of him yet. He is just a monster of a human being, and he's a deep threat. He can catch the short ones and take them to the house. And like you mentioned, in Seattle, if they let Russ cook, if they pick up the tempo a little bit, I think he could be in for a monster season. I'm a lot lower on Lockett this year. He just didn't show me a ton last year or besides that one big game that he had. So, yeah, I like Metcalf quite a bit.
Yeah, and part of the selling point is the targets. They never really have a wide receiver 3, 4 that's viable. The tight ends even, I think Gerald Everett is interesting, but these two guys, Chop, are going to dominate the targets. We know Wilson's going to throw it up to Metcalf, let him go make those big, spectacular plays. So highlight reel waiting to happen. Are you as high here as the people on FanDuel, DK Metcalf, wide receiver 5?
I am not. This will be the first one where I really vehemently disagree with this. I kind of like maybe 3 or the 4 next guys behind him here. I just think I want to see what he does this year, how much he improves, because at a certain point, if you're limited in the things you can do out there on the field, then it'll eventually catch up to you. So we'll see if he's improved, because if he hasn't improved, I think he's going to be caught, standing in the same kind of statistical area that he was last year, which wasn't bad, but I think it really tailed off at the end. I don't have a game log pulled up, but I think it tailed off last year. So we'll see how much he improved here. So, but I am higher on the next few guys behind him than I am on DK Metcalf.
I'm in the same boat. I like him, but I like some of these other guys a little bit better. And again, you're almost splitting hairs. It's not that you don't like the player. It's just you gotta find an order that you like him in. And I'm with you. So a couple other guys for me that I have ahead of the next guy on the list here on FanDuel, DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver 6, was fantastic. Another guy switching teams and didn't bother him one bit. Now Kyler Murray expected to take another step forward here with this offense. They bring in Rondale Moore, AJ Green, so the receiving weapons are there. They bring in James Conner to pair with Chase Edmonds. So, Chop, this looks like an explosive offense. Hopkins, do you worry about the competition of targets? Does he dominate targets again? Obviously one of the best in the game. Can he live up to this price point, wide receiver 6?
Yeah, I like him as the next guy above DK Metcalf. Like, okay. I think he's better than Metcalf in that range right there. Man, he's going to have a monster year again, assuming he stays healthy and everything like that, and Kyler Murray stays healthy. But the thing about bringing in Rondale Moore and, well, AJ Green, I don't think is that much of a factor, but Rondale Moore could grab some targets, but I don't think it hurts Hopkins at all. I think it helps him, because Cliff Kingsbury would throw the ball every single down if he had like the weapons to do it. And then, now he's kind of getting some weapons. So I just think it means more pass attempts for Kyler Murray having Rondale Moore rather than less targets for DeAndre Hopkins. I think it helps him in the long run. And I think this team could end up throwing the ball just about every down, man. I like it like that. So I think another year. Remember when he came in last year and he got traded, like that whole thing last year was no training camps, no preseasons. These guys were going in cold turkey with each other. Now you get a whole year with these two guys working together, Hopkins and Murray. And so I think Hopkins is going to have a monster year.
Don't count out the OG AJ Green, man. He could be sitting here amongst this panel and fit right in, but I still think he's got something to offer.
Maybe he was just catfishing Cincy last year.
There you go.
Maybe he was just trying to get out of town, so he's pulling up lame every few plays. But you never know, man.
Life in the desert, man. Maybe it'll heal the old body. So. Derek, thoughts here? DeAndre Hopkins was phenomenal last season. I don't think there's any reason for us to think any different this season.
Yeah, AJ Green was the king of uncapitalized air yards last year. Chop's favorite stat there. But I don't really see an argument, against DeAndre Hopkins this year. The last 4 years, using the half-point PPR, he's finished first, second, fifth in scoring among wide receivers. You mentioned the offense. You mentioned another year in the system. So, he's probably one of the safest guys you could draft in any format.
All right, wide receiver 7, another youngster really broke onto the scene in his rookie season. And Anthony with another question. Anthony's on fire in the chat. So, again, if you guys are out here watching, you got questions, throw them in there. We'll try to get to them. Derek, I'll just throw you his question. Does Justin Jefferson have the same season that he did in his rookie year?
I mean, he surpassed all my expectations last year, and I love this offense. There are a lot of mouths to feed. I still like Adam Thielen quite a bit. Obviously, Dalvin Cook's, going as one of the top, 2 or 3 picks in most drafts. So a lot of mouths to feed, but love the offense, and got to think he's going to be better in his sophomore year. So I could see him, not being as efficient. I think he was one of the more efficient receivers in the NFL last year, but I like him quite a bit.
I'm a big fan as well. Now, Chop, it's always Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown. I kind of back and forth on these two guys, and I move one over and then I move it each day. I tend to flip it back and forth. Today, I'm on, let me see, updated rankings. I'm on team Justin Jefferson over A.J. Brown. So agree, disagree? Do you like him here? Does he live up to what he did last season?
I love some Justin Jefferson. I don't see how we could think he's going to fall off or anything. It was his rookie year. Comes right in and just dominates like that. I don't think, the questions I have with Metcalf about what he can do on the field, route running, I don't have those questions about Justin Jefferson. He's really good. So I think he's going to be fine. I look at Minnesota and I think, you got Thielen, Irv Smith's going to get a little bit of action this year, and Dalvin Cook, they want to run the ball. But that's it. That's it, man. That's their whole arsenal on offense. So he has nothing else to worry about. And he's the best out of all those pass catchers. So love me some Justin Jefferson. We'll talk about A.J. Brown now. I'm not putting Jefferson above Brown, maybe. We'll see. We'll talk about A.J. Brown. But I do love me some Justin Jefferson. I love Justin Jefferson more than DK Metcalf.
Now, you besmirched the former Jacksonville Jaguars standout, D.D. Westbrook. So, I mean, there's a weapon in town there. Obviously, half joking, a little jab on Derek there with his Jags. But, Jefferson, I have no issues with. Again, it's a matter of Brown or Jefferson. So, Chop, sounds like you are an A.J. Brown guy. He is next on our list here. Again, I don't think there's much you can say against him. Julio Jones arriving in town, I think, is the big news. Are they going to be as run heavy now with Arthur Smith gone? The team total is, kind of sinking. I think they're going to throw a little bit more here. So do you worry about Julio? Does that help A.J. Brown's case? Do you worry about Derrick Henry? Sounds like you're confident A.J. Brown is going to be a stud this year.
I love A.J. Brown. I just think it's going to open up so much for him this year with having Julio there. Julio is not going to demand the ball, He's not that kind of a guy. So, how can you cover him? He was already hard enough to cover. With Derrick Henry, you got to worry about Derrick Henry so much, and the offensive line is so good, and Tannehill's really good at what he does. If the defense ends up being bad, this guy could put up some monster numbers. If they get caught in games where they just, the defense, they're grinding it out, then he'll just put up good numbers. But the defense is poor. He'll put up great numbers. I think there's just consistency from week to week. I could see this guy scoring a touchdown almost every week, just a single touchdown every week. I don't know if the volume is going to be there in some of the game scripts, but efficiency-wise, man, it's going to be hard to beat this guy. He's going to be super efficient with Julio helping him out and Derrick Henry having to worry about Derrick Henry in the running game.
Yeah, and Tannehill, I think, is the most underrated quarterback maybe we have in the entire league, especially in fantasy, where I see him get drafted. I think he belongs up near the Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady group, Derek. So I don't know if that's insane or what, but this guy's been so good for fantasy. A.J. Brown has been an absolute stud. So believer in the talent. Does Julio hurt or help him? I think this all coming together makes the case even better for A.J. Brown with Julio. And like Chop said, the defense is having to worry about Derrick Henry. So your thoughts here, A.J. Brown?
Yeah, this could be a bad take, but I have a hard time seeing Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, and Julio Jones all living up to their current ADPs. If they do, obviously Tannehill is going to have a monster season, and I do like him quite a bit. So for me, I like Henry and I like Brown, so the odd man out is probably going to be Julio, where he's going right now.
And for me, it's Derrick Henry. I think he's going to be the guy. I don't know that they're going to pound the rock as much as they have in the past, especially if they're not going to be a great team and their win total sitting right around 9. I think they're going to have to throw more. So I'd rather go A.J. Brown at his cost, honestly, than Derrick Henry where he's being drafted. So Derek, let's stay with you. Wide receiver 9, Keenan Allen of the Chargers. The guy's, lock and load every year, going to get a ton of points in PPR formats. So we know FanDuel's a half-point PPR. So you dial it back a little bit here, but it's hard to argue unless this guy gets hurt, which he's had mostly freak injuries. I think he's got that injury-prone label, and a lot of it's just been crazy stuff that's happened. But we saw Justin Herbert come in, be effective. Can he do that again? Do we believe in Keenan Allen as a top 10 receiver?
I do. Very similar to DeAndre Hopkins, just so consistent. He's had at least 97 receptions each of the last 4 years, and career high in touchdowns with Justin Herbert, even though he missed 2 games last year. So I think this is one of the better quarterbacks he's ever played with. So consistent, and I like him a little more in full PPR, but half PPR, I still like him right here.
I'm a little bit down on him compared to this rank. I have him wide receiver 13. So chopped. Derek's high on him here, kind of matches. I'm a little bit lower on him. Not that I don't like him. There's just guys I like better, I think have a bigger ceiling than Keenan Allen, who's been fantastic, been steady, has shown some ceiling. But your thoughts, you kind of break the tie. Does he fit here? Or the guys you like a little bit better coming up?
Yeah, just looking at the guys ahead of him, I wouldn't put him ahead of any of those guys. But looking at the guys behind him, I don't think I can make a case for maybe 1 or 2 guys, but I don't think I want any of the other guys over Keenan right here. I think Chargers are going to have a good year this year. Offensively, Justin Herbert keeps on getting better. The offensive line is going to be good. I think I don't think they're going to be much of a running team. So I think a lot of it's going to fall in the passing game, and Keenan's going to be the that glue guy for Herbert. So I like him here. I don't like him ahead, and I don't really like anybody behind him. So it's a pretty good spot for him.
There you go, Anthony. These guys got some Keenan love. I don't hate them. I just some guys I like better, including this next guy, Chop. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 10. Now, this is one some people will say that's too high for this guy. Has he earned it? Some will say, look at this offense, and that's what I'm going to say. If this offense can stay healthy, keep things clicking, CeeDee Lamb could take a huge step forward. We saw last season him primarily play the slot. Now they're going to move him all over the place and throw Michael Gallup in the slot sometimes, throw Amari Cooper in there. So CeeDee Lamb's going to play a lot more than he did last season. Dak stays healthy. Zeke looking trim, looking fit. This is your team. CeeDee Lamb, does he belong at wide receiver 10, or is this too high?
Yo, man, this was too high, right? I just don't see how that – I kind of don't get it.
Not too high.
I do get it, but I don't get it. Like, I get the hype because he is a specimen. He's really good. I think I can kind of look back now and look at those Oklahoma teams and say, you know what? CeeDee Lamb was probably the thing that made those things really kick when it was CeeDee Lamb and Marquise Brown on the same team, and they were like dynamic, and Marquise Brown got drafted early. In hindsight, it was kind of CeeDee Lamb who was the better receiver. So I get it. It's just hard for me to put him this high when I think he's really only going to be the second best receiver on his own team.
Oh.
So, and that's a compliment to the pass catchers Dallas has. So I think we're kind of forgetting about Amari Cooper, man, just because he's missed most of camp. That guy's a monster. So I think this is a little too high for Lamb, even though I love him.
See, I like the upside here. Maybe I'm falling for it. I don't hate Cooper, but I think Lamb kind of ascends and takes that role, kind of like we saw with Metcalf. Takes it over from Lockett. I think we see a similar rise here for CeeDee Lamb. So, Derek, you seem to be in Chop's camp. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 10, a little bit too high for you here.
A little bit too high. He's been a highlight reel. He's been fun to watch on Hard Knocks. He was even, taking some route running lessons from Amari Cooper if you watched last night's episode. But, yeah, I mean, if I can get Amari, 9 spots lower here on FanDuel, I will definitely take that. So love CeeDee Lamb, but I think it's a little too expensive for me.
And it's a good point, no matter where you're drafting. If it's here on FanDuel, if it's on Underdog, if it's on DraftKings, it's knowing the ADP, knowing where you can get guys, because every site is going to be different. So most sites, those two are pretty closely compacted together. Here you got a pretty big spread, so I don't necessarily disagree. If you're getting Cooper at 19, that's good value here. But I just like the ceiling, the potential upside here with CeeDee Lamb. So wide receiver 11, another guy I'm pretty high on this year, Terry McLaurin, who's been fantastic ever since coming in the league with pretty bad quarterback play, Derek. Now gets Fitzmagic under center here. We know he's going to wing the ball around it and has a propensity for really peppering his number one target with targets. So I really like Terry McLaurin here. I think sky's the limit here in this Washington offense. So wide receiver 11, too high, too low, just right.
I think it's just right. Two guys in this range with really bad quarterback play throughout their careers that I'm pretty high on this year because they do have new quarterbacks. McLaurin being one of them. You mentioned the upgrade to Fitz, and I think Curtis Samuel kind of helps this offense a little bit too. So, give me some McLaurin. He ended up with 1,100 yards, receiving last year with some pretty awful quarterback play.
Candace Reynolds in the chat asking about Sony Michel. Candace, we kind of talked about him in the beginning of the show. We're all kind of hands off. Let's see how this thing works. But we all kind of believe this will be a split backfield with Henderson. So if you can get Michel cheap enough, I don't hate throwing a dart on him at this point before the ADP kind of starts to rise up. So, Chop, thoughts here. Terry McLaurin, I think we're all fans of this guy across the board. I believe you're a Terry McLaurin guy.
Yeah, he's one of those guys I said maybe could rival Keenan Allen's position up there in draft position. I like Terry McLaurin because it's just what Noto said. He's had bad quarterback play, and he's still been good. What's he going to do with an adequate quarterback? The volume's still going to be there. Now, the one thing that may kind of hurt him a little bit is it could be a really great defense, and they could play a lot of slow-paced, low-scoring games, and maybe that hurts him in the long run. But he's done so good with bad quarterbacks. It's hard not to like him with a really decent quarterback. So I'm in on McLaurin quite a bit.
That's my one concern. I'm with you. And then you look at some of the competition for targets as well. Is Antonio Gibson going to be as involved as they're saying? Logan Thomas is a guy that's going to get a ton of targets. Curtis Samuel, Diami Brown's a guy that's kind of showing out in preseason. So as they get more weapons emerging, they don't need to necessarily depend on him. I still think he'll be their wide receiver one. I think he puts up big numbers. I'm a fan as well, but just something to keep in the back of your mind here with some of the other target competition and that good defense, like you mentioned, Chop. So the other guy Derek was referring to, I'm assuming here, is Allen Robinson, Chop, another guy that has never had good quarterback play, always tends to put up numbers. Now, hopefully, he gets Justin Fields. I don't know what the hell they're doing, and Justin Fields had to come to Andy Dalton's rescue after they were booing him off the field, and he called out the fans. But I think it's only a matter of time. Whether it's week one, I don't think it's going to take long for Fields to get on the field. So, thoughts on Allen Robinson? Is he a guy you want in this range? Is Fields the best quarterback he's played with? Does he continue to put up monster numbers? Chop.
Yeah, it's man. I'm kind of torn on this one right here because I love Allen Robinson, and he has had the distinguished. He could say he's played with some of the worst quarterbacks ever, man.
Oh yeah,
and he's put up good numbers, but we don't like if it's Andy Dalton. No, he'll just be the same Allen Robinson, which is good, but not this high good. But people seem to think Justin Fields is the answer. I'm not sold on Justin Fields all the way. So I'm really having a hard time with Allen Robinson up here. Like the best balls I've done so far, I have not taken. I want to say probably maybe 1 out of 20. I've taken an Allen Robinson in this range right here because I just have question marks about the quarterback still with this guy. I'm not sure. Now, if Justin Fields ends up being as good as a lot of people think he is, then Allen Robinson will be a really great receiver this year, but I'm not sold on that.
And I think that's the big deciding point. Do you believe in Fields? Because you look around at the competition for targets, it's Darnell Mooney, who was solid. Cole Kmet, I mean, there's not a lot there. David Montgomery catching passes maybe. Tariq Cohen looks like he's still banged up, maybe out for a while. So, Derek, that's the argument, is the volume should be there. Are you a believer in Fields? I'm with Chop. It's Dalton, then I don't want anything to do with this, but I think it's only a matter of time before it's Fields. In fact, I think it'll be week one. But where do you come out here on former Jacksonville Jaguar Allen Robinson?
Yeah, soft spot for me with A-Rob, but I'm banking on the fact that the Bears will figure out that Fields should be the starter sooner rather than later. And look, A-Rob finished 11th and 12th in fantasy scoring for wide receivers the last 2 years. Even if Fields isn't as good as a lot of people think, I think he's better than Trubisky. I think he's better than Nick Foles. So, yeah, I mean, he's a target monster each and every year. Doesn't have a ton of competition for targets either. I mean, you got Darnell Mooney, Marquise Goodwin, Cole Kmet. So, yeah, you mentioned Terry Cohen being injured to start the year. So I love me some Allen Robinson.
All right, next on the list, we got Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Bucks. Anthony making a comment about him in the chat. Likes Evans a ton here, Derek. I'm kind of on the fence with all of these Tampa Bay guys. Actually, Evans and Godwin, I think they'll be solid. Evans, we know, has touchdown upside. We know Brady's going to throw the ball a lot, but I think Antonio Brown's going to be just as involved as these two, and a guy you can get a lot later in drafts. So that's generally what I've been doing, is kind of passing on these guys. There's so many good options in this price range. So your thoughts here? We can let's lump them together. Evans, Godwin. Godwin is, I'll pull him up, Derek. Just talk these Tampa Bay receivers here. Godwin coming up in a couple spots. So hit them together. You like them both? Do you prefer one or the other? Or are you with me that maybe they're a little bit too high in this range?
I think I'll probably be, lower on both. I do think Evans is going to top his 1,000 yards again. He's done it every year in his career. But like you mentioned, there's 3 mouths to feed in this offense. Tom Brady's another year older. I don't know. I just don't feel great about it. I think he's going to get his touchdowns. I think he'll have his spike weeks, but I just don't think he has as much upside as some of the guys around him because, some of the other guys are true wide receiver ones right here.
I feel better about him in a best ball format, Chop, where I don't have, you draft Mike Evans in a season-long league, you almost have to start him. I don't see you having 2, 3, 4 receivers better than him. So, but it's one of them week to week, you never really know. So thoughts here on the consistency, throw Godwin in there as well. Where are you at with these guys? We all know you're a huge Tom Brady fan, so you got to love Evans and Godwin here.
Yeah, I'm looking for some serious decline in Tom Brady this year, and I think Mike Evans is. I love Mike Evans in general. He's from Galveston, Texas. That's my hometown. And he represents the city really well. Love Mike Evans. I don't like him this year. Don't like him in this spot because of what you just said. Like, I'm just quickly glancing at some of his games last year. 1 reception for 2 yards. Oh, and a touchdown. 2 receptions for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those are his game logs on some of the 1 reception for 10 yards, 2 for 37. He had some terrible, terrible weeks, and he has a few spike weeks where he went for 100-plus yards and got in the end zone. I prefer Chris Godwin in the offense in general, and I can't get behind Mike Evans right here in this spot. I have 0 Mike Evans so far this year.
Yeah, okay. I'm not alone on that. I was wondering if I was going to be on an island with that one, but I've kind of been avoiding him as well. This next guy, Chop, I've been drafting a ton of Robert Woods here for the Rams. Now, this is another one. You got Woods, you got Kupp. Some prefer Kupp. I don't hate that either. I like them both. But with Matthew Stafford there now, no Cam Akers, so maybe they're throwing the ball a little bit more. Maybe they're using Robert Woods. Like we talked about with Tyreek Hill, they love to use him on some of those jet sweeps and things. Not scoring touchdowns is the thing. He's kind of allergic to the end zone. That's my worry, kind of a Julio Jones syndrome. But I'm a big fan with Stafford here of Robert Woods. Chop, where do you come out on him?
I'm torn between Woods and Kupp. I think they both have good years. I think one of them could have a great year. And I'm going to lean towards Kupp, though, to have the great year just because Matthew Stafford. But Matthew Stafford is severely underrated as a quarterback. Like, think about his receivers. They were always producing in Detroit, and those were bad teams. They would just always put up numbers. He would make guys into wide receiver ones. So he's going to do the same thing in L.A. I'm going to lean towards Kupp because, I've seen too many like Danny Amendola types do well with Stafford in the past. So I think it's going to be Kupp coming out of the slot or whatever. But Robert Woods is a really good one. He's going to have a good year too, especially now that, what's his name went down with the injury, the running back.
Cam Akers,
man. Like now that's going to take away. We're trading for Sonny Michel. They're just not going to be able to run the ball as well. So they're just not going to try after a certain point. It's going to be a lot of activity for Stafford and the receivers. I like them both.
Yeah, it's the one thing I worry about besides Kupp maybe having the bigger season. The defense could be pretty good there as well, and maybe they don't have to throw as much as we want. So that's an issue, kind of like we talked about with Terry McLaurin. But again, Derek, they get very creative with Robert Woods. Just continues to get better each and every season. I think he has another big year this year.
Splitting hairs between the two for sure. I lean towards Robert Woods. 129 targets last year. 24 rush attempts. So he's a guy that's getting, 2 rush attempts a game, maybe something like that. I think that gives him a little bit of a higher floor. And hey, he got 8 touchdowns, by far the best in his career last year. You mentioned the upgraded quarterback. But these are 2 guys that I don't mind taking chances on.
All right, next 3 guys, we've kind of talked about a teammate at least. So we'll kind of go with these 3 guys together. If you have any additional thoughts, Derek, Tyler Lockett. We talked about DK Metcalf kind of becoming the one there, but we saw Lockett was one of the top receivers in the league over that first 8 weeks when this offense was very pass-centric, playing much faster. So Lockett, Godwin, we talked about with Evans, and Cooper Kupp we just spoke about with Woods. So any additional thoughts on any of these guys?
I mean, Lockett was one of the top receivers during the first 8 games, but he had 200 yards and 3 touchdowns in one game and 100 yards and 3 touchdowns in another game. The rest of the year didn't top 92 yards and didn't really do much of anything. So I'm off of Lockett this year. I like Godwin. Anytime we get a Brady slot receiver, I like that quite a bit. And he was dealing with a bunch of injuries last year. And then, I mentioned Kupp, like him as well.
All right, Chop, Lockett, Godwin, Kupp. Any additional thoughts on these 3?
Lockett, Godwin, Kupp. Kupp, exceptional. Godwin, I think, is okay. I like Godwin more than Evans. And Lockett, man, I'm really out on Lockett. Really out on. I don't like Lockett at all.
All right, I'm clearly the high guy on Lockett. I think he bounces back. And again, the lack of competition for targets there, and if they're going to be throwing that much more, I think it's going to mean good things for Lockett, who, for a smaller guy, is very involved in the red zone as well. I mean, they look for him when they get down there. I believe I saw a stat he's never dropped a red zone target. So very good around the goal line. So next couple guys, Chop, Adam Thielen, a guy that's kind of sliding down boards and maybe a boring choice for people, but a guy that's always had a lot of upside. Amari Cooper, a guy we've already spoken about, and Julio Jones. We'll group these 3 together, Thielen, Cooper, and Julio.
Yeah, I'm not high on Julio as high. I loved him in Atlanta. It's just going to be a different situation for him. He's going to be super efficient. He's just not going to get the volume anymore. So I'm not on Julio. Thielen is okay in here in this spot. He's just not the alpha anymore in the offense, man. That's Justin Jefferson for sure. And I think Thielen's going to have some more competition now in the red zone with Irv Smith. I think Irv Smith is in for a nice best ball year because he's going to have his weeks where he scores multiple touchdowns. Not a ton of volume, but multiple touchdowns. So that's going to take a little knock on Thielen here.
All right, Derek, a few of these guys we've already talked about. We've talked about their teammates here. So Adam Thielen, obviously Justin Jefferson has become the alpha, but still a touchdown guy. Amari Cooper, who you guys still believe is the number 1 in Dallas. I'm willing to put a little bet on CeeDee Lamb, producing him if you'd like, or Julio Jones here with Tennessee. So thoughts on these 3 guys?
Yeah, we like Amari over CD in terms of their draft value right now, their draft positions. I think it's going to be really close in terms of their season-long production. But, I like Amari quite a bit. Chop mentioned it with Thielen. I think there will be more competition for those red zone looks. He scored 14 touchdowns last year, and he's 31 years old, so maybe we see him slow down just a little bit. And then, it worked for Stephon Diggs with the new offense last year, but generally the wide receivers in new offenses tend to struggle a bit in a new system. So I'm going to be off of Julio.
All right, next range, a lot of young guys here. So we'll kind of group some of these guys together, give some quick thoughts so we can get to as many guys as we can here. Try to keep this under an hour. Remember, we got some things working with FanDuel, so stay tuned to the end of the show, and we'll fill you in on what we got going. So some big contests, excited about it. So we'll get to that here shortly. So, Derek, we'll stay with you here. We got Brandon Ayuk of the 49ers. Really started to see him come on towards the end of last season. And then a couple of Pittsburgh Steelers here. Deontay Johnson really developed into that number 1 receiver for them. And Chase Claypool was a big play waiting to happen, scored a ton of touchdowns in that offense. So Ben is back. You have Juju down the list a little bit as well here. So those Pittsburgh guys and Brandon Ayuk, thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I already know that I'm way too high on the Steelers. I like Najee Harris quite a bit and love Deontay Johnson. We know their offensive line is going to be terrible, but he gets so many of those targets right around the line of scrimmage. Had 144 targets last year. I still think he's going to be Big Ben's favorite weapon. And Claypool is more of the deep threat guy. So if their offensive line does struggle, I do think more targets will funnel to Deontay. He just got to fix those drops, and I think he can do that. And then Ayuk, I mean, top 15 receiver over the last 13 games of 2020. And he just plays for a run-heavy offense. So, volume's going to be a concern, but the upside's certainly there.
Yeah, I love Ayuk, the player. I worry about him in fantasy this season. You have Ayuk, you have George Kittle, you have Deebo Samuel. If it's Trey Lance, a guy that's going to run on his own, plus you have a team like you mentioned, it's probably going to be the second heaviest run team in the league behind Baltimore. So can they support all of these guys' ADPs? That's where I have a question with Ayuk. It's not a talent thing. I just don't know that he pays off this price. The Pittsburgh guys, I like them both. You pretty much laid out the case why. Deontay is going to be phenomenal in PPR, and Chase Claypool, I think, takes a big step and is that big play guy for this offense. So really a big fan of both of those guys. So Chop, over to you. Ayuk, Deontay, and Claypool.
Just kind of like you summed it up. Deontay, a big check mark right there. Claypool, I'm probably not as high on. I just don't think Big Ben, what he does, suits Claypool as much right now. Maybe that I don't know. Maybe that changes this. Maybe we just saw a bad Big Ben last year. Maybe he gets some of that arm strength back, but don't like him as much. And like Derek said, run heavy offense in San Francisco. Now you got to compete with Deebo as long as he's healthy and Kittle as long as he's healthy. So I'm not as big on Ayuk as a fantasy player. I think he's a great athlete, a great all-around player, but this might not be the year for him. So I'm not as high on him.
He's a guy that I've been getting in dynasty leagues. That's where I like to try to grab him because love the talent, and you can kind of kick that down the road. I don't have to worry about Lance. I don't necessarily need him to be productive now. It'll obviously help, but bright future there for him. So love the player, but season-long best ball, really tough to pull the trigger there. Next three guys, Chop. DJ Moore, it's kind of low here on FanDuel for some of the other ADPs I've seen. So I like the value with him, a guy that continues to put up numbers year in and year out. T. Higgins, another guy there in Cincinnati, really started to come on at the end of last season. And the aging OG Odell Beckham, will lump him in here as well. So thoughts on these three, Chop?
Odell, man, that's a good one because he hasn't done anything really. He's had like maybe 4 or 5 good games in 2 years with Baker. So that's tough to.
If that, I don't even know that's that high.
I think before he got hurt last year, he had a couple of big games and made it look a lot better. But that first year with Baker, he had one good game. So that's a tough one, man. This might be Jarvis Landry's, pass receiving core. I'm not sure. So I'm not sure about that one. That Carolina thing, I think that's going to be a gold mine this year. So, yeah, I like DJ Moore. I probably like Robbie Anderson even more than DJ Moore, but DJ Moore is going to have some big weeks. I think they're going to pass the ball a lot. Like, I'm looking at the Teddy Bridgewater tape right now because he got named starter in Denver today. And, boy, I just think Sam Darnold's like 5 times better than Bridgewater. So I think it's going to open up quite a bit for the receiver. So I really like Moore and Anderson a lot higher than what they're going here.
Yeah, I'm with you. And Terrace Marshall as well. It's been a big story. I don't know that we're going to get to him here today, but he's been phenomenal. So tells you Sam Darnold maybe is a great value at the quarterback position with all these weapons. Not to mention.
Keep going down.
Oh, I'm with you.
If I pull up
Sam Darnold in the
if I pull up my best ball, I got him in like 78%. I was grab him. Why not just grab him at the end of every draft almost? Like, what's the harm, right? So yeah, I got him a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, and McCaffrey there as well. So that's pretty damn good receiving core. So, all right, let's move on to the next guys. Chop, will stay with you. Guy I'm a big fan of, Jerry Jeudy. You mentioned Teddy Bridgewater. I think it's a perfect fit for these two. Jerry Jeudy struggled with drops a little bit, but also struggled with they couldn't get him the damn ball. I mean, he caught like half of his targets. So Teddy Bridgewater is going to find him. We know this is a fantastic route runner. This is a guy I think takes the biggest leap at the wide receiver position this season. So I'm trying to grab him in as many drafts as I can. Antonio Brown next on the list, I already mentioned. I like him. Why not just wait for him? If you want one of these Tampa receivers, he's going to get just as many targets as Evans and Godwin. And then Michael Thomas, a guy that some want to kind of stash on their bench, some are avoiding here. Thoughts on these three guys, Chuck?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on Judy. I think he's going to improve. He's a really good player. It's just going to be what is Bridgewater going to do for him? Okay, if Bridgewater ends up doing decent, Jerry Judy's going to do really well. All right, so I like that. We'll see how the quarterback plays out though. Antonio Brown, man, I think Antonio Brown has a better year than Mike Evans. Believe it or not, I think that he came in last year partially through the season and everything that went along with, like, prior to him coming in. It was just a bad time for it. It was really tough to get acclimated there, but now he's had the whole offseason. Tom Brady likes him. Tom Brady legit likes this guy personally and on the field. I think he's going to take a lot of targets away from the other two guys, a lot more than people expect. So I do like Antonio Brown. And, if we're talking about best balls, it's tough to spend a high draft pick on a guy you're going to get 0 from the first 6 weeks of the season, at least, minimum. So that's a tough one, but I'm also a big fan of loading up on the back end of your season. Like, I want to be hitting my stride and having good players in week 14, 15, 16, and 17 rather than doing well early, getting out to a lead, and then folding when the playoffs come around. So if I can get a good spot with Michael Thomas, I'll store him on the bench for a while. You can't go too high on him, though, but I do like the idea of having a little firepower coming back later in the year and hitting stride during the playoffs.
I'm out on him. I'm not disagreeing with what you say, and it's a lot easier in a season-long league if I got an IR spot to do exactly what you said. Okay, I'm gonna draft him and throw him in there and save it. But these best ball drafts, every spot is meaningful, and you got to win your league to get to the playoffs. So I love that outlook. Again, I'm not disagreeing with you. And there's certain players I've done that with over the year. How motivated is this guy to play? Does he come back? Is he healthy? We've seen him return and not do much. So I'm kind of out on Michael Thomas. Love Antonio Brown, Derek. Love Jerry Jeudy here.
Yeah, love Jeudy as well. One of the better route runners last year. Cortland Sutton's still working his way back from a torn ACL. And I think Bridgewater helps, at least his floor on a week-to-week basis. Drew Lock was just so inconsistent. So love Jeudy. I don't think I'm going to be playing Michael Thomas, but, I don't do a lot of best ball. I only have one season-long league that I play in, and there's no IR spot. But it does kind of look like Jameis is going to win that starting position. And if that's the case, that's going to be great for Thomas when he comes back. And then Brown, like you guys mentioned, Brady loves him, and that's really all that matters when it comes to a receiver that plays with Brady. So I'm okay with him here.
All right, we're kind of running out of time here. Greg Beans in the chat wondering how much Teddy has left. Teddy looked pretty good with Carolina, I think. He kept a lot of those guys viable. So I think it's a good fit. I think it's better for these receivers that it's Teddy over Drew Lock. So anyone here stand out? I wish we could get through all these guys. I mean, we got names like Jamar Chase, who we've heard a lot in training camp. It struggle. Chop, you brought up Robbie Anderson. We've talked Juju a little bit. Kenny Galladay on the list here, a guy that I'm very worried about this season. More rookies, Devontae Smith, McCall Hardman, Corey Davis has been a story. So, again, I wish we could go the list 100 deep here, Derek, but highlight a couple names here, guys that maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about that you like, that you're worried about, whatever you want to do here going down the list. What do you think?
Got to talk about my Jaguars. With ETN out, I think Laviska Shenault is going to be very interesting. Kind of seems like his ADP's just rising right now. And Marvin Jones has made some great catches. So I like both of those guys. I think Marquez Callaway is interesting, especially if Jameis ends up getting that starting gig. He's looked pretty good in the preseason. And then if you want a really deep sleeper, Brandon Cooks. These guys are going to be playing from behind in every single game. Maybe, they just look elsewhere and give the young guys some run. But he could put up some numbers in garbage time, and those count just the same as regular time points.
Yeah, Callaway's come on like gangbusters. I think initially everyone thought it was going to be Traquan Smith, and this guy's been phenomenal. If it's Jameis, we know they're going to need a wide receiver one, and Troutman has not lived up to the billing, so I don't think you got to worry about him. It's just Alvin Kamara as competition for targets. So he's very intriguing even later down the list. There's guys like Michael Pittman, Chop, who I think take a step forward. I know Henry Ruggs was a topic in the chat. I'm not a huge fan of his, but a guy like Jacoby Myers, I mean, it kind of goes on and on. There's some good value here later. So out of these guys, even if you want to go all the way back up to a Jamar Chase, anywhere in between, quick thoughts on the rest of these guys.
Quick thoughts. One guy I had highlighted that you just mentioned, Michael Pittman. Like, this is a number one wide receiver, and this is assuming they have a healthy quarterback situation. Michael Pittman is going to be really good this year. The problem I have with Pittman and some of these other guys who I don't have the schedule in front of me, but wow, if you're starting your playoffs in week 14, he gets a bye week. A lot of teams are on. A lot of good players are on bye week in week 14. That's a tough one for me to swallow right there. So I don't know if I want to go, good players on my bench for my first playoff game, but he's one of them. But I think he has a good year. Jalen Waddle reuniting with Tua is going to be, if they let him run the same type of routes he ran at Alabama, that's going to be unstoppable, and he's going to get a lot of yards after the catch, and it's going to help both those guys. And then just the last name I'll throw out there, this is way later in the draft. Deeper sleeper, way out there, man.
When you're actually sleeping.
Yeah, when you're really people are falling asleep.
Too many drinks. You've got a couple rounds left.
Give me a little Randall Cobb. I just can't believe that. And I don't like Randall Cobb. His skill set is diminished like that. But there's got to be a reason Aaron Rodgers wanted this guy to come back and brought him back. Like, he didn't just bring him back to sit there on the bench or hold the clipboard for him. He brought him back to showcase him a little bit for some reason. There's some kind of a trust there. Something's going on. He likes Randall Cobb enough so that he wouldn't come back until Randall Cobb got there, right? So something's going on there. This guy's a really great quarterback. He'll find a way to make – he found a way to make bad receivers look great his whole career. I wouldn't doubt Randall Cobb lines up in the slot and just catches a bunch of passes this year. Nothing great, but for, way down in the draft – you're looking for some extra of beef at wide receiver down there to have a big week or two. I think Randall Cobb's a good bet.
Yeah, I don't hate that one at all. Terrace Marshall, another name I brought up earlier, I really like. And I think the Jets' offense is going to be better than people realize. So, look pretty good in that last preseason game. I think Corey Davis, obviously the headliner there, but Elijah Moore, another name to keep an eye on. I think both those guys very, very viable here. So, K-Town's Finest checking in. Got James Robinson in the 10th to 12th round of best ball. So, Derek, you got to like that. So, quick thoughts here. I don't want to jab you because I don't like to see injuries like this. Travis Etienne goes down for the season. So, it becomes, is it the James Robinson show, Derek? Are they going to mix in Carlos Hyde? We know Urban Meyer loves him some Carlos Hyde. Should that be a concern for us, or do we get the J-Rob that we saw last season?
I mean, Hyde's going to have a small role, but I'm not worried about it one bit. Robinson, clearly the better back of the two, and he's good at catching the ball out of the backfield. Obviously, sad about ETN, but James Rob, those shares, if you drafted him, you're looking real good right now.
Yep, absolutely, and I agree with your Laviska Shenault take. I think they'll get a lot more creative with him, get the ball in his hands. So, all right, we've gone a little bit over an hour. Again, wanted to cover as many receivers as we could. So, got a little tease for you. We were talking with the folks at FanDuel. We've been ironing this thing out, and I can't release all the details yet, but we will be having not only a week one contest where you play against us on FanDuel. This will be a contest that runs the entire season, week one all the way through week 18, potentially even the playoffs. But the best part, it's not only a weekly contest. We're going to have some big prizes at the end. We're going to keep a season-long leaderboard. This will be a single entry contest. This will be a buy-in that everybody can afford. And this will be strictly for listeners of the DFS OGs podcast. So this is for you guys, the community, your guys' support for listening to us over the air, the likes, the shares, the reviews, everything that you guys do. We want to say thank you for that. So this will be strictly for you. You're not going to find this in the FanDuel lobby. So a chance to compete against us, a chance to win some big money at the end of it. You'll be able to drop some scores. So even if you can't play every week, even if you have some scores along the way that aren't great, you'll still be in the running. So, guys, super excited about this. Again, we'll release more details on everything hopefully next week. My goal is to have this thing live, ready to go by the time we record next week. So, can't wait. Chop, thoughts on this contest from FanDuel? It's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, this is what we were waiting for. This is what we were pushing for. Is a lot of money every week, some good money every week in the prize pool for you to win. But then we're going to keep track of everything. every week you're gonna you're gonna keep track of your score, and then we're gonna take the best score, your best, what was it 9 scores at the end,
Yep.
half your score. So if you miss weeks, no big deal, because everybody's gonna drop 9 anyway, and it's gonna be like a mix of DFS every week along with like season long, how good were you all together. So I think it's gonna be fun, man. Very interactive, and gonna have a good time with it.
Yeah, it's going to be a little hybrid, a little bit of both. Some DFS, some season long. We'll be mixing in some premium RotoGrinders packages, potential chances to appear on the show and join us. I'm hoping to do that as well, but the sky's the limit for this thing, Derek. Super excited to get it going.
Yeah, I can't wait. And like any competition between us three, can't wait to build a big lead the first half of the season and then blow it away.
There we go. We'll have to come up with a friendly wager here on the three of us here in this contest. But again, come back next week. Should have full details on it. Hopefully it's live. And again, this is only for the listeners of this podcast. Say thank you to you guys for tuning in each and every week. So again, we went a little long this week. We wanted to cover as many as we could. So we got through a lot of wide receivers. We'll take a look at the tight end position and potentially get into some week 1 next week as well. Start taking an early look at some of the salaries over on FanDuel. We'll dig into the FanDuel Sportsbook, see if there's any props, things we like. So really gearing up for football season and can't wait. So, Derek, final thoughts here for the people before we sign out for this week.
As always, thanks for joining us. And, hey, one more week. Let's get it.
Let's get it. We're almost there. The countdown is on. Chop, final thoughts for the people.
Yeah, this time next week we'll be doing our last show before the NFL season starts. So it's been a long time coming, and I can't wait.
Absolutely. My kids will be that much closer to going to school as well. Can't wait for that. We are the DFS OGs. Thank you again for listening. Thank you to the fine folks over at FanDuel once again for sponsoring the show. For my boys, Notorious, HeadChopper, I am Beer saying salud. Thank you for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.